Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, 47a of Maseches Kiddushin, and we are starting from 4 lines from the bottom of the page. The second word on the line is Meisvei. The Gemara is discussing the opinion of Rav, which was expressed on the first wide line here, where Rav said that if one is Mekadesh b'milveh, if one tries to betroth a woman with a loan, with the money from a loan that he gave her, she's not mikudeshes. It doesn't work to betroth her. So he lends her money, and then he says, that money that I lent you, you could take it, and that should be the Kiddushin. So Rav said that doesn't work. Why not? He said because milveh lehotza nitna. Because when you lend money, it's meant to be spent. And as soon as she takes that money from the loan, it's no longer his money. She may owe him money, but that money that he gave her is not hers anymore. It's as good as spent. She'll owe him that amount of money, but that actual cash that he gave her is no longer his, so he can't use that to be mekadesh her, to betroth her. So that was the opinion of Rav. So the Gemara says meisvei. We have a contradiction from a brisa. The brisa says, Ha'omer le'isha hiskachi li b'pikadon sheyesh li b'yadach. A man says to a woman, be betrothed to me with the pikadon that I have in your hands. A pikadon is an item that someone is watching for someone else. So he gave her something to watch, and so let's say it's a laptop, whatever it might be. He gave her a ring. It could be a ring. He gave her a ring to watch, and he says, I want that ring, which you're watching on my behalf, to be the Kiddushin. So, v'holcha umetzaso shenignav. She goes to look for it, and turns out it was stolen. O she'avad, or it was lost. So, maybe the ring is not the best example, because the Gemara, the Bryce then gives a case, im nishtayr himenu shava pruta mikudeshes. So let's say it was a bunch of cheap rings, of plastic toy rings. So if there's a shava pruta remaining, so some of them got stolen or lost and the rest are still there, and they equal up to a pruta, then mikudeshes. Ve'imlav eina mikudeshes. If not, then she's not mikudeshes. So basically, he gave her a bunch of, well, I used the example of plastic rings, toy rings to watch on his behalf, and he says, I want that to be Kiddushin. Now there, she's holding, she possesses them, so they could be the Kiddushin. He just says, now I want them to be yours. So that can work, but let's say she goes and she finds that after he offers her Kiddushin, they're not there. They were stolen, or some of them were stolen. So if what remains of them is worth a pruta, so then it's a good Kiddushin. If not, it's not a good Kiddushin. Uven milveh, and when it comes to a loan, even if there's no pruta left, she's mikudeshes. So the Bryce is saying that he lent her money, and the money he wants to be mekadesh her, to betroth her with that money. She goes to look for the money, it's gone. So the first opinion says, even though it's gone, the Kiddushin is still good. Now how could that work? The money's not here anymore. So Rashi explains, clearly it's working not through that money, but rather he's forgiving the loan. If he forgives the loan, so then actually she does get a hana. So it's not like Rav's case where he's trying to use that money as the Kiddushin, because actually this opinion is saying even if there's none left, it will be a Kiddushin. So the way that it's working is, according to the reason why it works is because the Kiddushin is being done through the benefit of having the loan forgiven. So that's the first opinion. The first opinion is that when it comes to a pikadon, when it comes to an object that he tries to be mekadesh, it's only if there's something remaining from that object, at least a pruta worth. So then that could be a Kiddushin, otherwise it's not. When it comes to a loan, even if there's nothing remaining, it could be Kiddushin because he's forgiving her the loan, which is a hana, which is a benefit that, as long as the loan was more than a pruta, that's a benefit that's worth more than a pruta. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Mishum Rabbi Meir, in the name of Rabbi Meir, Milveh Hare, top of the next page, Hare Kapi Gadon. That when it comes to a loan, it's the same as a pikadon. That when it comes to a loan, it's the same as the pikadon, the object, meaning he's holding that as long as there's a pruta remaining, it's a good kiddushin. If there's not a pruta remaining, then it's not a good kiddushin. But if there is a pruta remaining, it's a good kiddushin. That's what he holds. So the Gemara explains, so what's this have to do with Rav? Where's the question here? The Gemara says, Ad kan lo pligi ela demar savar milve afal gavdul nishtari menashava bruta. Up till now, all they're arguing about is that the first opinion holds that even if there's not a pruta left, it's kiddushin. Umar savar nishtari menashava bruta in, v'ilo nishtari menashava bruta lo. The second opinion is that no, it depends. If there's a pruta remaining, it's a good kiddushin. If there's not a pruta remaining, it's not a good kiddushin. Aval, however, dekuli alma, but everybody seems to hold mekadesh b'milva mikudeshes, that you could, if you are mekadesh with the loan, then it's good. In other words, the second opinion certainly holds this way, right? Rav said you can't use, if you lend money, and then you turn around and you say, I want that to be the kiddushin, it doesn't work because milvah on it, it's meant to be spent, it's already considered gone. That's not his money anymore. But the second opinion of this price is clearly saying, as long as there's a pruta left of the money that he lent, then it's a good kiddushin. It sounds like it's as long as you can use the money. As long as there's a pruta left, it works. And even the other opinion who said that, the other opinion just went a step further and said even if there's nothing left, it can work because you could do it through forgiving the loan. But even the first opinion doesn't necessarily disagree with the second opinion. It could be the first opinion will agree to the second opinion that the first opinion says even if there's nothing left, it can work because you could do it through forgiving the loan, that benefit. But if there was something left, it could be he would agree. We have no indication that he doesn't agree. So, says the Gemara, it seems everybody, both opinions in this brisa hold, that if there's any money, at least a pruta left of the loan, the man can use that money that he lent her as the kiddushin. And that would be a question on Rav, because there's a brisa here that seems to hold that that you could be mekadesh b'milva. You can lend money and then use that money that she's holding as the kiddushin, as opposed to Rav who says that no, the money that she's holding is hers now. This brisa seems to say that you can use it for kiddushin still, and it's still considered his. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava said, V'tizbara. Does this make sense? Ha mitaratzta. He says, is this brisa explained? Does this brisa make sense? Ha mishabashtahi. This brisa contains errors. There's something wrong with this brisa. So you're trying to bring a question from this brisa. Rava says there's a problem with this brisa. What's that problem? He says, Hi pikadon hechidami. What's the case of this pikadon that we're talking about? When the brisa talks about that the man gave the woman something to watch, and now she's watching it, he tries to use it for kiddushin, what's the case? Ida kabel alach rayos. So if the case is where so let's take a step back actually. The brisa had said that if there's a shava pruta left of the pikadon, if there's at least a pruta left of it, the kiddushin works. If there's nothing left of it, it doesn't work. So he says, what's the case? If she accepted responsibility, meaning she agreed to watch it as a watch person, and if it would be stolen, she would take responsibility. Which, by the way, normally if you're watching something for free, you don't have to pay if it's stolen, only if you're being paid to watch it. So let's say she either was being paid to watch it, or even though she was watching it for free, she accepted that she would pay for it if it got stolen. Fine. So if the case is where she accepted responsibility, so what happens? It gets stolen. So now she owes money for it, right? So hainu milva. So then that's the same case as the case of a loan. If at this point, she just owes money for it, so then it's the same case as the loan. Now, the case of the loan, the first opinion was that either way, whether there's anything left of the loan or not, it's not a good Kiddushin. So Rav is pointing out there seems to be a problem here. The first case of the Brisa said that by a pikadon, by an item that she's watching, if it gets stolen and there's nothing left of it, the Kiddushin is not good. But says Rava, if the case was that she took responsibility for it, so then what happens? It got stolen, so now she owes money for it. So it's like a loan, she owes money. And that first opinion held that when it was a loan, even if there was nothing left of it, and it was just money that she owed, the Kiddushin was good, because he could forgive it, right? So the same thing should be true for the pikadon. So it can't be that she accepted responsibility. So ida lo kabbalah achrayus. So if the case is then that she didn't accept responsibility, she doesn't have to pay if it gets stolen or lost. Ihachi. So if that's true, adatani seifa. So rather than in the seifa saying uva milve, that when it comes to a loan, afal pishon ishtayr menashav pruta mikudeshes, that even if there's not a pruta left, the Kiddushin is still good. Niflog v'nisni b'dida. Let's distinguish within the first case itself. In other words, the beginning of the Brisa again gives us the case where a man gave a woman something to watch, and he gave her something to watch, and then he tried to use it for Kiddushin, and it said if there's at least a pruta left, it's a good Kiddushin. If there's not a pruta left, it's not a good Kiddushin. Then it switched gears. It left the case of pikadon and went to a case of a loan. So, and in the case of the loan, it's money owed. So our Gemara is saying, why does it switch gears and talk about a loan when it could go into further detail and bring out the same idea within the case of the pikadon? In other words, it says the Gemara, Niflog v'nisni b'dida. Let's distinguish within the case that we were dealing with, the pikadon. Don't go to a new case. Talk about this case first. And say, Bamed dvarim amurim. When do we say that as long as, that if there's nothing left, it won't be a Kiddushin? Bamed dvarim amurim shelo kibla la'achrayus. That's only if she didn't accept responsibility. So then, if the item's gone, and she doesn't owe him anything for it, then what's he going to be mekadesh her with? There's no benefit that he can give her. She doesn't owe him any money that he could forgive. Aval kibul al achrayus. But if, the Brisa should have said, but if she accepted achrayus, she accepted responsibility, afagav delo nishtayr imena shel pruta mikudeshes. Even if there's no pruta left, there's nothing left of the pikadon, of the item, the Kiddushin should still work. Because why? Because if the case is that she accepted responsibility, then she now owes him for it. And if she owes him for it, then he can forgive it, and there would be a benefit there. So Rava's pointing out that there's a problem with this Brisa. The Brisa doesn't read properly. Because the first half of the Brisa, it talks about a pikadon, and then it goes on to a case of a loan. But Rava's pointing out, why shift to a case of a loan when you could bring out the same idea within the pikadon case? What's special about the loans? What's special about the loan is that, according to the first opinion of the Brisa, the Chachamim, I guess, even if there's nothing left of the loan, it completely got stolen, he could still use it for Kiddushin because he could forgive her the debt. And that could be the benefit. So Rav was pointing out, why bring in a new case of a loan to make that point? Go back, you could still talk about it within the case of the pikadon. What happens? He gives her something to watch, and then he tries to be mekadesh with her with it. So she goes to look for it, and it's gone, or some of it's gone. So the Brisa said, if there's still a pruta there, so great, that could be the Kiddushin. It's his item, and now she has it, it's still his. That could be the Kiddushin. But if there's no pruta left, so then it said, if there's nothing left of it, then there's no Kiddushin. Within that case, we should have said, when is there no Kiddushin? That's if she never took responsibility, and therefore she doesn't owe him anything. But if she took responsibility for it, and now that it was stolen, she owes him for it, so then it should be a good Kiddushin, because he's forgiving her the debt. So why talk about her alone? Talk within that case of the item that she's watching. So says Rava, Ela taretzachi. So rather, you have to read the Brisa, you have to reread the Brisa. The Brisa must be saying, Uvimilve, and when it comes to a loan, Afal pisha nishtayre mena shababruta eina mikudeshes. To make sense of the Brisa, you have to say that the Tanakama, the first opinion, was not saying that it is Kiddushin when there's nothing left. He was saying there's no Kiddushin even when there's something left. Even though there's a pruta remaining, it's still not Kiddushin. And why? Because of Rav's opinion, that when you give a loan, it's lehotzanin, that's meant to be spent, and you can't use it for Kiddushin. So rather, the Brisa should say that the Tanakama holds when you give a loan, even, and then he says, I want to be mekadesh you with that loan, even if there's a pruta remaining of the loan, even if the whole loan is remaining, eina mikudeshes is not Kiddushin because it's meant to be spent. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Mishum Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Milve harehi kapikadon. That a loan is like a pikadon, and it has the same rules. If there's a pruta remaining, it's good. If not, then it's not. Now, 1 second. That seems to be that at least Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, in the name of Rabbi Meir, holds against Rav. Right? Because he's saying that as long as there's a pruta remaining of the loan, it's a good Kiddushin. Which seems to indicate that he holds that it's not meant to be spent. It's not assumed that it's spent. So says the Gemara, what are they arguing about? In other words, is Rav getting involved in a machlokas here? About, is Rav's point really subject to a dispute between these Tanaim? Are they arguing about whether milva lotzaditna? Whether it's meant to be spent? So the Gemara, so at the end of the day, Rav seems to be getting into a machlokas Tanaim, which wouldn't be good for him to involve himself in that. So how can we resolve this? What are they arguing? What else might they be arguing about? The Gemara is asking. So again, the Tanakama holds the way that we're rereading it, that as long that when it comes to a loan, even if there's a pruta remaining from the loan, he can't use it for Kiddushin. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar, the name of Rabbi Meir, is saying that as long as there is a pruta remaining, it could be a Kiddushin. It seems like they're arguing about Rav's point, whether a loan is meant to be spent, and if it's not meant to be spent, then it's still the man's money, she's just holding it, and he could use that for Kiddushin. So Amar Rabba, so Rabba said, Ashkachtinu l'Rabbanan b'bei Rav, I found the Rabbanan at the rabbis at the Beis Medrash study house of Rav, Diyasvi v'ka'amri, that they said the following. You know what they're arguing about? B'milve b'shus bailin l'chazara, v'hu adin la'onsin kamipalmi. They're arguing about how we look at a loan when it's still in the property of the owners, in terms of whether it needs to be returned. So, in other words, the students of Rav are saying, really, everybody agrees that a loan is meant to be spent. And once the borrower extends their hand and starts to use that loan, then yeah, it's true. They've now been machziking it, they've taken possession of it, And now that money is no longer the original, the lender's. They owe the lender money, but this money that was lent is not the lender's money. However, and at that point, the lender, the owner, can't take it back. He can't say, give me back the money, actually. And it becomes a loan. And even if it's still intact, at that point, once the borrower has started to use it, it's now the borrower's, and the lender cannot demand that money back. However, what if the borrower never touched the money yet, has not started to use the money, and now the lender says, actually, I want it back. It's still there. It's right there on the table. You haven't even started using it. I want it back. So does the lender have the right to demand it back? So that's what they're arguing about. The first opinion that said that it's not Kiddushin, how no. Even in this case, she never used it, but it got stolen, right? But she never used it. But still, as soon as she got it, it became hers, and therefore it's not Kiddushin. But Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds that since she didn't use it yet, so it remains the possession of the original owner, the lender, and he has a right to ask for it back, and he can also use it for Kiddushin because it's still his. That's what they're arguing about. Now, the students of Rav threw something else in. They said, V'hu adin la'onsin. It's also still the original owner's if an ones happens to it. An ones means something happens to it beyond anyone's control. So who's responsible for it? If something would happen to it, would the borrower have to pay for it? Or is it the lender's loss? So the rabbis of the Beis Medrash of Rav are saying that's also part of this dispute. According to the first opinion, it's hers already. And so if something happens to it, she has to pay for it. I mean, it's her money. Like, if something happened to it, it happened to her money. She has an outstanding loan, but it has nothing to do with this money. This money is hers already. And Rabbi Meir would be holding that no, it's still the lender's money. So if something happens to it, an ones, something beyond anyone's control, it's his loss. That's what the rabbis in the Beis Medrash of Rav said. Dimar Savar Milva Bershus Love Kaima. The first opinion of the Mishnah holds that the loan is considered in the possession of the borrower, and therefore the lender, the man, cannot use it for Kiddushin. V'adin la'onsim, and the same for onsim. If an ones happens to it, it's the borrower's loss. Umar Savar and Rabbi Meir holds Milva Bershus Bailim Kaima. The loan is in the hands of the owners, the original owner, since the borrower has not started to use it, and therefore he can use it for Kiddushin still. V'adin la'onsim, and also for onsim, if something happens to it, it's the lender's loss. Says Rava v'amina lehu, and I said back to them, it's a very nice pshat, but le'onsim kuliyama lo pligi de birshus lo v'kaimi. No, I disagree with the second point. He agreed with the general point, but he disagreed with the second point. When it comes to onsim, when it comes to if anything happens to it, everybody agrees it's considered in the hands of the borrower. My timer, what's the reason? Lo gara mi she'ela. It's no worse than borrowing an object. And ma she'ela dahadra be'ena. Chaya ba'onsim. When it comes to borrowing an object, which you're going to return intact. Person borrows a shovel, so they have to return it as a shovel. That's the expectation. They borrow a shovel from the neighbor, they're supposed to return it. What if an ones happens to? Who's responsible? So the halacha is, even though it's beyond the borrower's control, a borrower is responsible. So Rava says, just like when it comes to borrowing an object, the word for that is she'ela. When it comes to borrowing an object, that's true. And even though it's something that's normally returned intact, milveh, lo koshaking. Wouldn't you say all the more so for a loan? A loan of money is not normally returned intact, meaning you don't return that exact money. All the more so it should be considered in the possession of the borrower. So if the borrower would be responsible for a shovel, that he's going to return as a shovel, it never becomes really his, then a loan of money, all the more so, which is meant to become his, or hers in this case, so all the more so that she would be responsible if an ones happened to it. So Rava disagrees with that point. And he says, the only thing they're arguing about is whether the loan is still considered the possession of the lender in terms of him being able to retract, as long as the borrower has not started to use it. So he agreed to the general point that they were making, that that's what they're arguing about here, that the first opinion, the Tanna Kama holds that the loan already becomes the borrower's as soon as it enters his or her hand, even if he or she has not started to use it. And therefore, in our case, the man cannot use it for Kiddushin, even if there was a pruta remaining. And Rabbi Meir held that as long as she hasn't used it yet, it remains the possession of the lender, and therefore he's allowed to use it for Kiddushin as long as there is a pruta left. But everybody agrees to Rav that a loan is meant to be spent, and once she touches the money and starts to use it, then even if there's a pruta remaining, it wouldn't be a good Kiddushin. So ask the Gemara, Ve'ela, however, Hadamar Rav Huna, that which Rav Huna said, Hashoel kurdo mechavero, if somebody borrows an axe from his friend, so back to our shovel case, here it's an axe, it says, Bika bo kana, if the borrower used it, he chopped with it, so then he takes possession of it. In other words, at that point, the lender cannot demand it back until the terms of the lending have been completed. But lo bikabo, but if the borrower has not yet chopped with it, lo kano, he doesn't possess it yet, and the lender is still allowed to retract and take it back. Says the Gemara, Lema kitanaya amar l'shmaitze. Is this argument subject to a machlokas tanayim? In other words, we just said that when it comes to money, according to the Tanna Kama, as soon as she takes possession of the money, it's completely hers. When it comes to, according to Rabbi Meir, only once she uses it does it become hers. So here, Rav Huna made a statement, and he said, if you use the axe, so then it becomes the borrower's, and the lender can't retract. But if you don't use the axe, the lender can still retract. He seems to be just within the position of Rabbi Meir, that it depends if you use it or not. So is he sticking his head into a machlokas tanayim, a dispute between tanayim, and actually not going like the majority opinion, but rather going with the opinion of Rabbi Meir? So the Gemara says, no. Meaning that dispute is specific to a loan of money. It would not apply to a loan of an axe. They only argue about a loan of money, where it's not going to be returned intact. That's the expected terms, that you don't return it intact. And therefore, that's where the Chachamim say that as soon as you get it, it's yours, and whether she's used it or not, or he's used it or not, it becomes the possession of the borrower. Aval b'she'ila tahadra be'ena. But if you borrow an object, and the expectation then is that it will be returned intact, divrei hakol, so then everybody agrees, bika bo in, lo bika bo lo kano. Then everybody agrees it's only once you start to chop with it that it's now in your possession, but if not, not. In other words, because it's meant to be returned intact, so so then there's an expectation that I'm going to get this back intact. As opposed to when you lend money, the expectation is I'm not getting this back intact. So that's where we would say that, at least according to the first opinion, that it's immediately becomes the possession of the borrower, because you're not expecting to get this back. But when it comes to an object where the lender is expecting to get it back, so there, I guess there's a greater attachment to it still, because I'm going to get this back eventually anyways. It's not, there everybody agrees, it's not until the borrower actually starts to use it that the lender is not allowed to retract. Okay, the Gemara says another Nema Kitanai. Once again, it seems that Rav, his opinion about using a loan for Kiddushin, that it doesn't work. If you try to be Makadesh with a loan, with the money from a loan, it doesn't work. Seems to be the subject of another Machlokes Tanaim. The Gemara says, Hiskachili b'shtar chov. If a man says to a woman, I want to give you a shtar chov, a promissory note, as Kiddushin, O shahaya lo milva b'yad acherim, or he had lent money to someone else, v'hirsha aleim, and he transferred authority to her over that loan. So he either gave her a shtar chov, a promissory note, or he transferred authority of a different loan to her. Rabbi Meir Omer Mekudeshes. Rabbi Meir says that works for Kiddushin. The Chachamim Omrim Eino Mekudeshes. The Chachamim say it's not a good Kiddushin. So the Gemara wants to know, first of all, before we examine what the two opinions are, Hai shtar chov heichidami. What's the case that he gave her a promissory note? Who owes the money in this case? If the case is that he gave her a promissory note from someone else, meaning someone else owed him money, that's the second case. The second case was where there was a loan in the hands of someone else that he gave her authority over. So if the second case is where he transferred a loan from someone else to her, so what's the first case? Where he gave her a shtar chov, a promissory note. Elalav, shtar chov dida. So it must be the case is that it's her shtar chov. It's money that she owes him. It's a promissory note that she possesses. Well, he has it, but it's for her loan, and he's giving it to her. So then what are they arguing about? What could be wrong with that? He's forgiving her loan? No. Uvimekadesh b'milva kol mipalgi. The Gemara suggests they're arguing about whether you can be mekadesh with a loan. So the Gemara's suggestion, at least, is that what could they be arguing about? They must be arguing about where he's trying to be mekadesh her with the money from the loan. So she owes him money, and he has a promissory note. He says, you know what? Here's your promissory note back, and I want the money that I lent to you. Meaning, if he's forgiving the loan, I guess we're saying they won't be arguing. What's there to argue about? He's giving her a hana. It must be he's trying to do Kiddushin with that money. That could be what they're arguing about. Whether that works. The Rabbi Meir says it's a good Kiddushin, the Chum say it's not a good Kiddushin. So that's the suggestion, and that would mean that Rav is once again involving himself in a machlokes Tanaim, in the dispute of Tanaim, which we try to avoid. So the Gemara answers no. Really, the case is that the shtar chov is from others. It's a loan that he's transferring from someone else. And there's two cases here. The first case is where there's a milva b'shtar, there's a document, and the second case is where there's no document. That's why in the first case it says that he gave her a shtar chov, he gave her a promissory note. The second case is just he gave her authority over a loan. That was a loan that had no document. So what are they arguing about? So the Gemara will examine each of those cases individually, one at a time. We're not going to do all of it now, but the first one that he examines is b'milva b'shtar b'mai pligi. That first case, where he gave her a document, a promissory note, what are they arguing about? So what could be wrong? He's giving her a promissory note that she now from someone else. He's transferring a loan to her. It sounds great. That should be a great hana. That should work for Kiddushin. The Gemara says, "Beplukta de Rebbe v'Rabbanan kamipali." They're getting into the machlokes between Rebbe, V'Yudanasi, and the Rabbanan. Titania that we learned in a brisa. Osios niknos b'masira. The question is, can you acquire osios, words, written words, meaning a document, a loan document, a promissory note, with Masir by just handing it over? So does that work to acquire? If when the man gives her this document, does it become hers? So the first opinion is yes. Dibri Rabbi, that's the opinion of Rabbi. He just gives it to her and that's it. The Chachamim say, Bein shekasa v'lo masar. Whether he wrote her a new document documenting this sale, a contract for this sale or this transfer of this other document of the promissory note, and he didn't actually give it to her, never gave her the promissory note, he just wrote a contract up that he was giving it to her, or bein shemasa v'lo kasav, or whether he gave her the promissory note but he didn't write a contract of the transaction or a receipt of the transaction, lo kana, she does not acquire it, or anybody transferring a promissory note a shtar chov does not require it, until you do both. You have to both give over the promissory note, and you have to write a shtar mechira. You have to write a contract of the sale. You need both. That's the opinion of the Chachamim. So Rabbi says you just hand it over, and the Chachamim say you have to hand it over and write a contract of the sale of this loan. So Mar Islay de Rabbi, Umar Leslay de Rabbi. That's what they're arguing about in our brisa here. Our brisa, which said that when the man tries to be Makadish her with a shtar chov, does it work or not? So Rabbi Meir said it's a good Kiddushin. The Chachamim say it's not a good Kiddushin. So they're arguing about this. Rabbi Meir says it's a good Kiddushin, holds like Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, holds like Rabbi, that you don't need to write a contract when you transfer a document, so it's hers, and it's a good Kiddushin. And the Chachamim hold, like the Chachamim of the Brisa, that you need to write a shtar mechira, a contract of the sale, and he didn't do that, he just gave her the document. So that's why it would not be a good Kiddushin. V'bayisema, or if you want, you can say, another answer, Dekuliyama leslu de Rabbi. Really, nobody holds like Rabbi. Everybody agrees to the Chachamim that you need to both write, you have to give the promissory note, and you have to write a contract of sale. But what they're arguing about is the opinion of Rav Papa. Rav Papa said, when a person sells a loan document to his friend, he has to write, in addition, he has to write, Kni lechahu, you acquire the loan, v'kol shibudeha, and also all the liens that are involved in this loan. So you have to also write in the contract that you're also transferring the liens that this loan has. Mar islay de Rav Papa, umar leslay de Rav Papa. The first opinion holds Rav Papa. The second opinion, or the other opinion, does not hold Rav Papa. Which one is which? So really everybody agrees that you have to write a contract. And that's what they did, I guess. The case is that he gave her the shtar chov, but he also wrote a contract of transferring it to her. And that was supposed to be the Kiddushin. So Rabbi Meir says it's good Kiddushin. So he doesn't hold Rav Papa, because he doesn't hold you have to write in the contract, I'm transferring you this loan and all of the liens. And the Chachamim, who say it's not a good Kiddushin, they hold that the contract wasn't good in that case. It's not a good contract. It's only a good contract if you write that I'm transferring you this loan and all of the liens. And that's why it wouldn't be a good Kiddushin. The case would be where he didn't write that in the contract. He wrote a contract, but he didn't write that he's transferring all the liens as well. Okay, the Gemara is going to go on and give some more explanations for what they could be arguing about, but we'll save that Eretz Hashem for next time. Thanks for listening.